All right, everyone. How you doing today? This is class 10, I believe, fall 2022, Recording Studio Fundamentals, Copeland School of Music. And before we start class today, so we've got 8 people here. We're still missing a few people. We've had a few people who have unfortunately left the college this semester. They've had personal issues, and some people that fell behind, and they're going to be withdrawing. But the people that are here now, well, with the exception of a couple of people, are mostly caught up with all the assignments. Yeah, everybody that's here now is pretty close to caught up. There's one or two people that are behind. And so I'm just going to let you know that next week I'll be assigning the final project. And it will be due probably 5 weeks after that. At the end, the last day on the last class of the semester, it'll be due. But there's an issue that's come up, Mr. Ogora. Can you please share your screen with me? I've set it up so that you can screen share, and go to Pro Tools and let me see. I'm going to move this here for right now. All right. He's having trouble finding his EQ7, so we're going to help him out with that. There we go. All right. So just right there, just click on that little box. Right here in the insert area. All right, go down to the master. Great. Click on that. Go to EQ. There, EQ 3.7 band, right there. There you go. All right.
Thank you. I found it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So unshare your screen, and then we'll stop that. All right. So today we're gonna continue on with our mixing, and the final project of the mixing is going to be due next week. Now, just so that you know, I will be able to go over assignments tomorrow morning. But for the next 2 weeks, I'm at crunch time for this film I've been scoring for ESPN. So I'm going to be really busy outside of school, and I'm just an adjunct here. This is just, I do my best to stay on top of everything, but there are periods during the semester where I have to put this, in terms of grading assignments, on the back burner. I'm always, I'm prepared for classes to teach the classes, but yeah, I can get to the assignments when I can get to them, but I have deadlines that I have to finish up this score over the next. Today's the 6th, over the next 12 days. So I'll be pretty busy with that. Like I said, tomorrow morning I'll be able to give you guys feedback on anything you've handed in today. After that, I'll get it as I can. Maybe I can steal a half an hour here or an hour there and just catch up on everything. And if you're behind with projects, keep doing them. Put them in the late assignments folder so it's easy for me to find. I won't have to go searching through all the folders. I don't have the time to do that. It's very easy to just pop things into the late assignments folder, and I will go over them as I can, and I'll see what date you've popped them in there. So just do that, please. It would really help us all out. Okay, so today we're going to be talking a little bit, before we get into the continuing on with our mixing, we're going to be talking about setting up microphones, setting up your audio interface, and using a microphone and getting levels and all that stuff. So there's a couple of videos we're going to watch, and I have stuff set up here that I can demonstrate. I've got another camera that I'm going to be holding in my hand that I can zoom in on stuff, and hopefully that won't be too shaky. But what I want to do is I'm going to share my screen with you guys, and there's I'm going to there's a couple of videos that we're going to watch. So the first thing we're going to watch, and I'm going to pop this in the chat room. Maybe you can post that somewhere. The first thing I want to do is I want to talk about how to properly
show you how to wrap or coil cables.
Wrap a cable up, right? You know, it sounds stupid, but cables are expensive and they can easily break at the most inopportune moments. So I have a lot of microphone cables. So if one of them broke, it would be a drag. I'd have to buy a new one, but I've got backup. But let's say you're recording something. I live, like an hour drive, 45-minute drive from the closest music store where I can get a replacement mic cable. And they're only open till 5 or 6 o'clock at night. And so if I'm recording something at 8 o'clock at night and my mic cable is broken, it's a hassle. So I take care of cables. I have mic cables that work that I've owned for 20 years. They work just as well as they did when they were brand new because I take care of them. And one of the big things to learn, and it's stupid sounding, but is the proper way to coil a cable. Typically, when we're in person, I have Justin Tricarico come in because he is great at demonstrating this. But here I've got a guy on YouTube who does a really good job, and we'll take a look at him. All right, so it's really important, and guys that are engineers, they know how to do this. People that I remember one time I was in New Orleans a few years ago, and I was walking down the street, and there had just been a film shoot there, and I spent 5 minutes watching a tech guy, a crew guy, coiling up these thick 100-foot cables, right? Like they were like this thick. And he was using that technique there where he was alternating back and forth, right? And the reason you do that is every time you open the cable, it's fresh. You're not creating a little crease in the cable, which will eventually cause the wires inside of the cable to break, So, that means that you don't do this kind of a thing, right? No, that doesn't work. That might work with a garden hose, but that's not the way to go, because then you see what happens with it is it gets all coily like this and it's not good. So that's bad. And then, so just watch that and practice a few times. You guys should have your recording kits or your own equipment, but taking care of your cables is very important. And also, when you buy things like loaves of bread, all sorts of stuff, they come with twist ties, right? These little things. You should maybe get like a little Ziploc bag or something that's neat that you can keep tidy. And just when you get one, just put it in there and put it in a drawer somewhere so that you have a collection of these things because they are great for keeping your tables tidy so that they don't get all twisted up. And then you could put this somewhere and pull it out and it's ready to go. Alternatively, you can purchase something like this. There we go. I have a camera right here, so it's hard for me to see the screen. All right, there it is. It's in focus. And this is just a roll of that twist tie. It's got a little cutter device right here. So I've got both. I've got a little plastic bag that's filled with these things, and they're all over my studio, keeping the cabling, the neat cabling. So you don't trip over it, and so that it doesn't get all tangled up. If you got cables all over the place, you're going to trip over it. You're going to pull a mic stand down, and then the mic's going to go crashing into the ground. You're going to break the microphone, and then you got to buy a new microphone. And it's just, taking care of your equipment is really important. So that's one thing. So we got the cable. All right, let me put this back over here. Now, for doing what we're doing as far as audio goes, we have you have your computer, you've got Pro Tools. So we've been playing audio from Pro Tools, and we've been doing MIDI instruments inside of Pro Tools. but you're going to want to record your own audio. Now, it's true that most of your laptops or all your laptops have internal mics, which you talk in to do Zoom meetings or FaceTime or the other one, which I can't think of, that's really popular, the other video conferencing software. But that's not really a high quality sound. What you need for a good quality sound is a room that's not very noisy. I played a video about how, with some ideas to cut down some of the reflections in the room that you're in, but you need an audio interface and a microphone, a separate microphone. So we're going to take a look at this. I'm going to play this video, and then I have a similar thing here to show you in more depth. So let's watch this. Let's get a little bit more in depth with that. And let me switch my camera view. No, not that one. This one here. And let's turn this guy on. All right. And let's turn this light on. All right. So I'm going to hold this camera. Let me go back here. And so you don't see the camera being all jiggly. All right. Here we go. So this is the back of, this is my Focusrite. This is my spare audio interface. I keep this in the box downstairs because I have, if you look here in my rack, that red one in the rack there, that's my high def audio interface that I use when I'm recording live instruments. And then for doing everything else, I've got this little audio interface here because it sounds good and it's very easy to use and it fits on my desk. This was a little bit too big to fit on my desk. So we'll look at the back of this, right? And as we can see right here, this is a Thunderbolt interface. So you guys will most likely have some sort of USB interface. So you take the cable, you plug it into here, and you plug the other part into your computer. And then you'll notice here that this has power, right? This one needs power. So this needs to be plugged in, which I'll do in a second. And then mine here has these line inputs, which have no volume control on them, and line outputs. So I have on my desk, you see I have a speaker right there and a speaker over there, right? So if you have speakers on your desk, what you would do is you would take outputs 1 and 2 and put 1 into the left and 2 into the right speaker. So just always remember that speakers, odd numbers are for the left, and even numbers are for the right. So 1 is left and 2 is right. It's kind of a drag because if you're on a boat and you want to know port and starboard for left and right, port has the same number of letters as the word left. So therefore, you'll always know that if you're on a boat and you want to go to the port, you're going to the left. My Uncle Louis taught me that when I was a little kid. So anyway, all right. So that's the back. All right. Let me put the camera down for a second, or let me switch views so I'm not rocking your world. And I'm going to plug the power supply in, and I'm going to turn the volume on. Right. So let's go back here. Whoops. So I've plugged the power supply on here. I'm going to just click the volume on there. All right. And let me just give me 1 sec. I don't want to break any of my cameras. I love my cameras. And then let me flip this around. High tech, come on. Come on, get in focus. I'm a little too close for this camera, for this lens. Okay, so this is the front. Now, I'm not sure what your interfaces have, but on this one, I have these 2 jacks here, which have little headphones icons. When you are using this in Pro Tools, plugging in your headphones to your computer will no longer let you hear what's going on in Pro Tools. Your audio interface takes over the audio output from Pro Tools. So you have to plug either speakers in or headphones into this jack. And we have headphones that come with the recording kit. And then here, these are the volume knobs for the headphones. So before you plug the headphones in, listen to this very carefully. Before you plug headphones in and put the headphones on your head, turn the volume of your headphone outputs amps all the way to the left so that they're off. I don't want you guys deafening yourself, all right? So before you plug headphones in, well, before you put headphones on your head, turn the volume of the headphones all the way off. And you can also do the same. This is the master volume coming out, right? So on some audio interfaces, the big knob also controls the volume of the headphones. So if that's the case, you would turn the volume down here before you plug headphones and put them on your head. All right, so this has 4 different microphone inputs. And when the guy was talking about combi jacks, right, what he meant was that, let's see if I can get this up and zoom in, focus in. There we go. Is that you could take a guitar cable and it will fit in there, right? So you could plug like a guitar, or if you've got a keyboard, you could plug it into the front, and then you have volume controls, input, gain. Or you can plug a microphone cable in. So now when you're unplugging the microphone cable, grab a hold of the audio interface and grab from here. Do not pull out from here. Grab, get a nice firm grip, and just pull. It comes right out. The other side of the microphone cable that you plug into, let me get that in focus. There we go. That you plug into the microphone has a little button here that you can push in when you plug it in, and push in when you unbutton it, unhook it up from the microphone. But again, do not be pulling from the cable, right? Get your hand around it like this and pull out and hold on to the microphone with the other hand. I'll show you that in a minute. Now, you'll notice here that these are the volumes for the gain on the microphone inputs. So all the way to the left, again, is off. And again, have these off when you're plugging anything in. And then right here, there's a little button that says 48V. Some of your microphones are going to need that. That's called phantom power, and I'll explain that in a minute. And I'll show you what I mean about how to plug all this in. I'll do a demonstration of that in a minute. So this is all set up and ready to go. But what I'd like to do now is talk about microphones. There we go. All right. Hey, I'm in focus. Great. All right. So there are basically 2 kinds of microphones with subsets of microphones. There are what are known as dynamic microphones and condenser microphones. Dynamic microphones can work just by plugging in to the audio interface. Condenser microphones have electronics inside that need power. So all of your audio interfaces have something called phantom power. And what phantom power, why it's called phantom power, is that you don't see a separate power cord. The microphone cable has a line in it that carries the 48 volts directly to the microphone. So it all gets carried by this. Your dynamic microphones do not need phantom power, and your condenser mics do. So what is a microphone? Well, do you remember when we talked about signal flow the other day? We were talking about a guitar pickup being a transducer. And a transducer is a device that takes one form of energy and converts it to another form of energy. A pickup for a guitar is like a microphone for the guitar for the guitar strings. And typically, every string on the guitar has a little pole piece, a magnetic pole piece under the string, so that it picks up an even volume distribution from each string. So in other words, if you only had one pole piece and it was in the middle, the higher strings and the lower strings would be not as loud. It would be unbalanced. A microphone, a regular microphone, is also a transducer. It converts sound waves into electrical energy. And the output of the microphone is very low. Therefore, you need a microphone preamplifier, just like on the guitar amp when we talked about that a couple of weeks ago, to bring the level up to a point where it becomes functional for us to use when we're recording. So let's talk about dynamic microphones. You've seen this before. This is the most ubiquitous dynamic microphone ever. This is a Shure SM58, right? Used on vocals live. Now, this microphone I've owned since 1987. So it's older than most of you in this class, if not all of you. But I've been using this mic since 1982 because this mic used to mic the piano at the Little Shop of Horrors off-Broadway musical I played in when I was in my 20s. And after the show closed, I was gifted this mic. Anyway, I still have it. And this is a dynamic mic. It's typically used on stage for vocals. It's got a built-in windscreen. Additionally, you can take a foam windscreen and pop it over the top to give you a little additional protection. If we look at the mic that I use to talk into, I've got a little foam screen on top of it because with these microphones, they're not very sensitive. So in order to get signal into them, people have to be very, very close to the microphone. And when you're that close, you can get wind coming out of your mouth and you can pop your P's or T's, and you get things that are called plosives, which you don't want. Additionally speaking, if you're playing a wind instrument, you could also use a windscreen, and we'll talk about that in a minute as well. The one reason why these are great on stage is that they don't pick up a lot of sound away from the microphone. So they help in reducing the amount of squealing feedback because they're not very sensitive. They're also very durable. You can see that this one here has a flat top. It's been dropped multiple times. It doesn't look curved like this. It's flat. This has been dropped many times, and it still works. This has a brother or sister microphone called the SM57, which has the same type body, but notice the top is a little bit different, doesn't have the windscreen. If you wanted a windscreen from this, you could just pop that on there. And they typically come with a little clip, and you just slide the mic on the clip, just like that. But you slide the mic on the clip after you screw the clip into the microphone stand, which I'll demonstrate shortly. Let me organize my show and tell here. This is another kind of dynamic microphone. This is also made by Shure. This is called the PGA58, so it's a cheaper version of the SM58. And what's nice about this particular mic is it's got an on-off switch here, so you could turn it. Let's say your going to go away from the microphone, you don't want it to feed back, you can just turn it off here, right? It is an on-off switch. So it's useful for live situations for that. So in other words, if I was talking to you and I wanted to do something else and I didn't want any sound to come in, I could just turn the microphone off here. We talked about this the other day, but I've got my collection here of SH blank T mics that I purchased on eBay. Right, and this is the one I was talking about. So this microphone cost me about $35. This is an Astatic ASTATIC 335W-7. It's older than me, which is old. I've got two of them. One of them doesn't work, and I'm not sure which one it is. I would have to plug it in. This one is a black body. These are all dynamic microphones. Then I've got this one, which is really cool looking. It's very Art Deco looking. This is from the 1940s. This is an Electro Voice, I believe. Yes, an Electro Voice. And it's got an on-off switch. Now, as I said before, these are useful for capturing lo-fi sounds because they don't have a frequency response of above 4K, 4,000, right? This microphone's from the 1940s. This is older than lots of people. Okay. Now, the other kind of dynamic mic is special. And that's called a ribbon microphone. Those microphones there have like a little magnet in them that uses that changes the sound to the audio waves to electricity. This is a ribbon microphone. It's got a metallic ribbon inside of here that goes the length of this, and that changes sound waves into electrical energy. And this also has these microphones. Remember we talked about polar patterns. These have a cardioid pattern, which means they only pick up in the front, like a oval in the front. This has what's called a figure 8 pattern. It picks up in the front and in the back, although the sound in the back and front is different. So if you want, and the other thing about this is that you will people use these now much more often than they used to. These were used, not this particular one, but ribbon mics were used in the 1940s all the time. They were very ubiquitous. They didn't look exactly like this. They were these big RCA ones. And typically ribbon mics have been used on brass instruments because they have a very a smooth top end and they roll off on the high frequencies. So they cut out harshness. More recently, they're being used all over the place. They're used on guitar amplifiers because they can cut out some of the high-end harshness. If you want a really mellow piano sound, they can be used on that. They can be used on string instruments, guitars. They can be used on almost anything, voice. These instruments, if you ever have use of a ribbon mic, they are very, very, very fragile. They should always be in their case when they're not being used. You should be very careful that you don't really have a lot of wind from an instrument or something else going into that. You can blow out the ribbon very easily, and then there's a repair bill. And the other thing is that you do not use phantom power on a ribbon mic ever. It will blow out the ribbon in a second. With these, if you have the phantom power on, it's not going to do anything. These are like indestructible practically. But these are fragile little children that need to be babied and cradled and like loved. Otherwise, they break very easily. They should always be in their case because wind can blow it out. You just have to be very gentle with these. I have nowadays though they are making ribbon microphones that have electronics built in that you can use phantom power with, because the output of these ribbon microphones is so low that if you do not have a really high quality mic preamplifier, either external or in your audio interface, you have to turn the volume of your mic preamplifier up so much that there's a lot of, it adds hiss and noise. So to combat that, there's two things you can do. The companies make this thing called a cloud lifter, which is an inline mic preamplifier, which gives you clean boost of power to bring the what's coming out of here to an easier level for your audio interface to take. Or some companies like AEA and SE Electronics, to name two, they make a ribbon microphone that has built-in electronics that does use phantom power. I have a stereo ribbon microphone, which I purchased last year, which I use on my piano, which accepts phantom power. And I purchased it specifically because I didn't want to worry about blowing it out. And also because there's more output to it. So I didn't have to worry about my preamp output so much. So I always keep this in its nice padded case. And then it's got an aluminum box with foam pad around it. I leave it in all the time. So this one I take care of. So that's pretty much it for dynamic microphones, right? There's ribbon microphone is a dynamic microphone, and then there's the other ones that I showed you, like all the Shure variations and the old school variations. Condenser microphones, there are two food groups, right? One is a large capsule condenser microphone, because the capsule right here is large, and a small capsule condenser mic, because the mic capsule is small. Now you can't, I don't know if you can see, let's see if I can get the light. Yeah, you see that thing that's reflecting there? Right, that's the mic capsule in there that picks up the sound. You could tell, let's see if I can get the reflection right again. Well, you could just see that it's much bigger than the one on this microphone. Now, just so that you know, when you look at a microphone, how do you tell when the front from the back? Virtually always, the manufacturer's name is on the front. Thank you, William. Excellent. The logo. Yep. Okay, so the main difference between the two of these, this you would use on vocals. You can use these on anything if you know what you're doing. But the typical uses of this microphone would be vocals, saxophone. If you had two of them, you could use them as drum overheads. You could use them over a string section. I've used them on. I have one of these, but I have other matched pairs of large capsule condenser microphones that I've used to mic string quartets. I've used to mic choirs. I've used to mic all sorts of stuff. The main and this is typically used. These are used also as drum overheads. These are used as overheads for choir. So I don't know how many of you have been in LaFrac Hall lately at the college, but if you go to a concert hall, you'll typically see two microphones suspended from the ceiling, hanging down from the ceiling in what's called an XY pattern like this. Those are typically small capsule condenser mics like this. These pick up transients really well. So these are great on acoustic guitars. They're great on hand percussion. They're great on all sorts of like pianos. Although you can use the large capsule on pianos as well. It's just you have to see what your goal is in terms of recording. Do you need to have that really strummy, sharp attack on the acoustic guitar? Does your piano need to cut through a mix, or is it mellow solo new age piano? Well, all those things require, different microphone techniques and possibly even a different microphone, right? So, yeah. So those are two. Other examples of small capsule condenser mics, they can be tiny, like this. This is a small capsule condenser mic made by a company called Zebra Audio that's no longer in existence. I have a bunch of these. These are not great microphones by any chance. This is a Neumann KM184. I bought this one in 1997, I think. So I've had this for 25 years, and notice it's immaculate. I take care of this. I will never, if I take care of this, the chances of me having to buy another one is negligible. And when I purchased this, it was $400. It's $900 now for this microphone, right? So that's another reason to take care of your stuff, because when you replace it, the prices are typically on quality. This is a quality microphone. Can go up. This is a cheap microphone. This is $20. But what's nice about this is it'll fit all over in like tiny little spaces, you know? And yeah, it'll fit in a tiny space that a larger microphone won't fit in. Now, this is another large capsule condenser microphone, and this is the AKG 414. This is and this one here is the Neumann TLM 103. So, for example, when I purchased this, it was $700. I purchased this right when it came out in the early 2000s or the late 1990s, and it was $600. I think it's $1,300 now. All right, so you take care of your stuff. I did write my initials on the back because when I was in my studio space in Manhattan, one of the other engineers also had one of these, and we would borrow each other's microphones when we had to record stereo. And I just wanted to always make sure I got mine back. So, yeah, because I had my serial number, it was, it was all registered under my name. So I just wrote my name on the back there in a Sharpie. Okay, now this is also an underrated microphone. A lot of engineers don't like this because it's got a very clean, sort of non-exciting sound. But what's great about this is it's a great teaching tool. And we have a pair of these at the college because it has, and I went over this in the video on mic placement and stuff. It has, notice that same, again, a large capsule. It has different polar patterns. So let's see if I can get this closer and in focus. Yeah, look at that. So all the way on my left, you see a circle, right? So that's omni. Then the next two to the right of that, my right, are two cardioid patterns. You see they look a little bit different. And then the second one from the far right on my right looks like a light bulb. Right, so that's hypercardioid. You notice that it's the you notice that the top part of the mushroom looks a lot tighter than on than on these over here, right? And then the one all the way to my right is a figure 8, which means it picks up in front and in back. So you guys all have some form of a condenser mic from our kits. We have, I forget which ones we got. We got them right when the pandemic started. We got all the kits. Okay, so the next thing here is I'm going to take my headphones off. And I'll talk louder so you can hear me. All right, so we've got our microphone stand here, and let me get in focus. Right, and you notice that this microphone stand has legs and an arm. So first thing you do is unscrew the leg, you let it fall all the way down, you tighten it up a little. When you tighten these screws, tighten them so that they're firm, but not so much that when you try to loosen them up, you're going to strip it and break it, right? It needs to be firm, but not over tight. And then you pull the legs out so that you have a nice tripod base, right? And then you place that down on the ground. I know that some of you already know how to do this. Then with this guy here, it has a screw right here. You loosen that up and you fold your arm up, and then you can adjust the height right with this here, and you can bring it up and down. So you don't want to be at the extremes, right? So the way this is set up right now, which is for storage, is that there's only a little space over here, and this is very long here. So there's no counterbalance for your microphone. So if you put a microphone here, it's going to do this unless you make this really tight, and we don't want that. You want that to be firm, but not over tight. So I'm going to loosen this up, right? And then I'm going to pull this back. Oh, not that one. I'm sorry. I'm going to get that nice, firm but not over firm. Right here, there's a little screw on this side here. I'm going to loosen this up and I'm going to pull this back so that it's more balanced, right? Now let's see. There we go. Okay. And then I'm going to up that. I should be wearing a white shirt. Let's see. Let me see something here. Let me turn my light over here so that you can see me better. There we go. All right. So I've made this, a little bit up, right? So the next thing we want to do is we want to put on our shock mount. So most of the ones that you've got have shock mounts, the ones that we gave you. And it has a screw on it. So I'm going to just make it so that it's parallel to the mic stand. I'm going to screw it in gently, right? And I'm holding it while I'm screwing it so that it doesn't fall down. And I'm going to get it in a position where it's tight, but it's not over tight, right? So if it's on the side like this, you simply loosen this up here and rotate. And then tighten back up. And then I can adjust this like this, right? And then once that's on correctly, and you make sure it's firm but not too tight, you take your microphone and you have the logo facing you and you put it in this stand like that, right? And then now if I was going to talk, I'd have it like, about a foot away from me. Then now if you're going to talk, we also in our kits have a windscreen, right? And that simply screws on. It's got like it's got this kind of a thing here, which you can widen and close. These windscreens are a little bit wacky, right? I'm not really crazy about them, but this one came with the microphone. So I'm going to attach it to the microphone stand, right? So you see right now it's too low. So I got to get it up into a position where I can fashion it so that it is between where I'm going to talk and the microphone. And then I'll just tighten this up, right? And again, tighten it firmly, but not over tight. And then you can just tweak it here a little bit, right? And then that's nice. So that'll protect it. Okay? Now, what I would like you to do is to take your mic cable, right? Now, if you've got, I don't know how Justin has them set up because this is his gig. He probably has a little something affixed to it. But if this is your own personal bit, what I typically do is I take the twist tie and I just affix it back onto the cable, and this way I won't lose it. And it's right there afterwards. So you take this side here with the little squeeze box on it, the little squeeze things, and you're holding it in your hand, and one hand holds the microphone, and then you have to align up the holes, right? And it just goes in just like that. All right. And then you squeeze that little lever and you just gently pull out like that, right? Again, as I said before, you're not pulling from down here, and you have one hand holding the microphone and the other pulling from the connector itself, just like that. So that's in there, right? And so, yeah, let me just adjust that again. Okay. Let's get this back over here. Let me grab, whoa. So just make sure that it's firm. You see how that fell down? I didn't have it firm enough. It was a little too loose. It was like too loose Lautrec. Okay. Let's get this. Let me go up. Let me focus. There we go. All right, so I've got the microphone cable, right? And on this, I believe that the 3 prongs, you should have it so that it's like a V going in, a U, right? Just like that. In other words, you see how the way it's set up, it looks like a U or a V, the 3 prongs. That's the way it should look when you're plugging it in, so that this little hole on the top slides right into the top. Typically, that's what happens. Now, notice I've plugged this in, right? And let's zoom. Let's get in focus. Sorry for the wobbliness. I don't know how else to do this. This is the worst part of teaching this class, is teaching how to do this. This is much better live. Okay, so the volume is off. I'm going to engage phantom power by pushing this little button in. And you see now this is lit, right? And you're not going to hear this any differently because I don't have this audio interface plugged in. But I've got the microphone close to me now, and you're going to see that there's a green line that borders the audio interface. As I turn this, check 1 2, check 1 2, check 1 2. You see, it starts to, you can see that it's turning green as I'm talking, right? What you don't want to do is turn it up so much that it turns red, right? See, now it's turning red, and that's no good. The red doesn't look red because of, green. But see how it's turning red? That's too much gain. So again, as I said, you bring it up and you start seeing it turns green at some point. And, when you see it turning a little bit green, then you can start bringing your headphone volume up a little bit, and you keep talking. And you'll this way you won't deafen yourself. All right. So I really always talk about being really careful when you have headphones on. You've got one set of ears, and as somebody who's been playing live music since 1970 in public since I played my first gig when I was 15 years old in the mid 1970s. My first bar gig. Right, I was 15 years old and I was playing in bars, playing in blues bands. I played a lot of loud music in my life. I've almost always worn earplugs, but a couple of times, there was feedback when I was younger from the PA system, and you're killing your hair on your ears, so you got to be really careful when you're wearing headphones. Yeah, okay. Let me turn this off. All right. Let me get this out of the way here. All right. So any questions on that? That's about as clear as I can make it online. Let me, give me 1 second here. I got to get my mood lighting back together. I see, that's blocking me. All right, so I'm a little dark today. What can I tell you? All right, so now let me show you some stuff here. So I'm going to be demonstrating using this microphone here. All right, so this is a condenser microphone, and I have it plugged into this. Right? This is the audio interface that I'm using. Now, one thing that this has that your interface might have, if you play guitar or bass, is it's got these front jacks here that have a little guitar on them, or they might say DI, right? These are the proper impedance to plug a guitar or a bass into, and this has the microphone jacks in the back. And so I'm plugged into this one here. All right, so just that's the deal there. So let's go back to my screen, and this has a console because it doesn't have a lot of controls here. It's got a console, but you can see that I'm talking, and this is the meter of the microphone right here, right? These are my headphone outputs. So this, I'm listening on headphones 1 and 2, and that's how loud it is. And then this is the, I could turn that, whoops. Yeah, you see it almost started feeding back. I have to be really careful about that. Okay, so this is the console. And let's imagine for a second that this is what you're looking at when you're looking at your audio interface. So if I zoom in on this, right? Imagine that this is your audio interface and this is the volume knob. I've got 48 volts turned on for this microphone, and notice I've got it turned up. And this lets me know it's at 38 dB, and I have an input level here, and you can see that how loud it is here. Now, you see when I'm talking here, this is actually a little bit hotter than I'd want it to be for recording an instrument, but I'm talking pretty much at one volume level. So I don't have to worry about overloading the microphone because I'm not screaming into it. So if you guys are wearing earphones, just pull them out from your ear for a second. I don't want to deafen anybody if you're wearing earbuds or headphones. So I'm going to get in and I'm going to talk, and you're going to see that the meter is going to get louder and the sound is going to get distorted. As I talk louder and louder, you can hear that it's distorted, right? Now, it's not going into the red because I have a compressor that's stopping it from going in the red, but that's a little bit more advanced. So when you're setting the volume for how you're recording an instrument, you have to keep that in mind. You want to make sure that, just like we put in the EQ37 so that we can have a number to look at when we're of our output, our master bus, you want to make sure that the sound you're putting in is not too soft and not too loud. It's at the loudest thing will not distort and overload the mic pre's. Now, let me just talk about this for a second. So everybody that's a live performer, you always talk about dynamics and playing with dynamics. And, you want to bring people in by playing soft, and you want to, overwhelm them when you play loud. And it's like a roller coaster that you're taking the people on. And that helps to keep people's attention. When you're recording, you need the ability to tame your dynamics a little bit. You know what I mean? The louds are not as loud and the softs are not as soft. Playing in the studio is different than playing live. And to be a truly great performer, you need to be able to understand that and control your performance mechanism. For example, if you're listening to classical music on the background in your house, all of a sudden during like a solo section, you can't hear the music. And then during a 2D section, so you turn it up. Then during a 2D section, it's way too loud, right? If you listen to pop music, that's like horrible, but it's all at one level. You can leave everything on, and the softer things you can hear and the louder things you can hear. Well, that's because it's all been compressed beyond belief. That's not good either. But what I like to do is teach people sort of somewhere between that. So when you're recording something at home for your projects, which you will be hopefully before the semester is out, keep that in mind. So, okay, so we've got this here set up. And so this is our audio interface. So I'm just going to move this over to the side for right now. And I'm going to open Pro Tools, and I'm going to do a new session. And I'm going to show you how to set up your computer and how to record something. And we're also going to talk about latency, and I'm going to show you what happens with latency. Okay, so let's just call this test, and sample rate will be 44.1. And I'm going to create and save this on the desktop. So this is Pro Tools, and I had this set up for another gig I was doing. So let's go back to bars and beats, and we got a grid. We'll make it. Okay, so when you've got your audio interface, before you plug in a microphone even, you should test that sound is coming out of it. So you do that by going to your setup, and you're going to go to a playback engine. right? And the playback engine here has this little box here that you can check. And I have a few, right? These are some of my monitors. This is the video switcher. This is the speakers on my Mac Pro. I've got a keyboard. One of my keyboards has an audio interface built into it. My main master keyboard. This is the universal audio. And then the Pro Tools HD Native is that red Focusrite I've got in my rack when I want to do HD recording that has great mic preamps that sounds much better than the universal. But the universal is very good. So I've got the universal audio Thunderbolt. You'll have, most likely, if you've got a recording kit from us, it'll say Focusrite Scarlett. You choose that, right? You guys don't need to have the video engine enabled. Don't worry about that. The buffer size, I've got a very powerful computer, so I can leave it at 64 samples. And I'm going to play around with this and show you the difference. So I've got that set up. I'm going to be okay. And then what I would typically do is open up an instrument, play something on your keyboard, and see if sound is coming out of your headphones, just to make sure that the audio interface is working. All right. So if you guys have been using the audio interface all along, you know that. So I wouldn't worry about it. But we're going to record some audio now. So let me just do one thing before that. Let me show you this. So you have to go to I/O, which is under the setup window. And what you'll want to do is go to input. It's got these 3 tabs on the top. Just do default, bus, default, and then this brings everything back to the state of the natural state of your audio interface. So you have to go to I/O and set the input, the output, the bus to default, and then click OK. And I went over this with you last week, Chelsea. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So this is something you need to know how to do, because if somebody sends you a session, it will overwrite your I/O. And so you need to know how to set this back up. I wish that there was a button that you could push to maintain your I/O and only change it when you want to change it. But this is the way that Pro Tools works. So I hit OK. So I'll do Command-Shift-N, one new mono track, and I'll put voice. And then what we're going to want to do is go to your I/O, in and out. So the top line is the input and the bottom line is the output, right? I over O. If you think about this as a fraction, right? This would be I over O. So input, top, output, bottom. And you can see that I'm popping my P's because I'm too close to the microphone. Let me move that a little bit. So I'm in microphone 1, right? It's got all these other names here, but it's basically microphone input 1. That's where I'm plugged into, so I'm going to select that. And then all I have to do is hit record enable, and you'll see that there's level coming in right there. So if I do, excuse me, if I just start recording, hello, this is Recording Studio Fundamentals, and this is a test of the audio. Recording, hello, this is Recording Studio Fundamentals, and this is a test of the audio. Now, I can hear that there's 2 of me right now. Why is that? Because I'm hearing the sound as it's being played through this little software mixer. Also, sound that's coming out of this. Right? Give me 1 second. Let me check 1, 2. So if I mute this right now, right? So you could see that I got softer. And this is the sound that's being recorded of me. And so if I were to record enable this again, check 1, 2, I'm testing this 1, 2. And now I'm only hearing my voice as it is being recorded, because on this little software mixer here, I've muted this. So you typically might not have to worry about this, because you probably, if you've got one of those Scarlett IOs, you won't have this. So let me just mute this. Let me just leave this on for now, because this way you're going to hear both inputs. Now, I've got a latency of 64 samples, which means that you're hearing my voice when the software console is muted. You're hearing my voice 64 samples after I'm saying it. I'm going to turn this up, the playback engine, I'm going to turn this up to 1,000. Give it a second. And now you're still hearing me, but if I unmute this, you're going to hear me and my echo, right? That's because 1,024 samples after I speak, you're hearing the sound come through the audio, through the Pro Tools. Now, think about trying to play in time when you're hearing yourself 1,000 samples later, right? That's audible to all of us. So what you need to do is, and it's hard for me to even talk when I'm hearing my echo afterwards, is to make your playback hardware buffer size as low as you can get it on your system. So now it's at 128, and I can still hear the echo a little bit, but it won't bother me. It wouldn't bother me. But what might end up happening is it might affect the way that you play, and you might end up playing a little bit early, right, to make up for the fact that you're hearing yourself later. It's a really weird mind mess. Now, what I could do to avoid that, and one of the things that's really good about having that little software mixer in the background, let me just show that again, open up the console, is that I can hear this, which is happening with no latency, and just mute this while I'm recording. And now I have no latency while I'm recording. I'm hearing myself immediately, and then I can just record it. And then if I want to hear it play back, just unmute it when I'm playing it back. So that works really well. But you guys won't have that. So what you'll want to do is get your buffer size as low as you can. Having a lower buffer size increases the amount of processing power on your computer. So if you've got an older computer and you've got a lot of other tracks and a lot of MIDI tracks, right, you may have to go up to even 256 buffer size, which you'll start hearing a little bit more. So this is at 128. It's perfectly fine. It's only a fraction of a second back. Let's try 256. Check, 1, 2. That's okay as well, but I can definitely hear myself later. So, 128 is good. So see if you can get your computer set to that. If not, you'll have to just live with 256. Now, when I use my HD system, that takes over and I don't have any latency. That's one reason why I have it, because I've got a separate card in my computer which handles all that processing, and I can hear things with only like a 3 or 4 sample. My input samples. So, do you have your audio interface plugged in, Chelsea?
No, I don't.
That's the reason why.
Okay, thanks.
And you have to select your audio interface, and then you do that. Okay, so let me just mute this. So now I've recorded something with the microphone, right? So let's do this. Let's see. Let me get this console back up here, and let me mute all these presets, and you'll hear how crappy my voice really sounds. Yes, okay, so that's a little bit more like my voice. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's see. Let's do this. Let's go here. All right, so let me get things out of the way so I don't break anything. So I've got an acoustic guitar here, right? I've got everything plugged in. And I'm going to take the microphone and let's talk about. Now, this is a microphone made for a voiceover. If I was going to really record this, I would have this microphone set up. But this will be fine for demonstration purposes. So I'm a little bit away, right? Now watch what happens as I move the guitar. I went over this before, but you can hear how it's getting darker. And then if I get a little further away, different sound, right? So when you're recording, you have to sort of figure out the best spot for your instrument. Now, if I was just playing by myself and then somebody was going to sing later on top of it, I might have a position that's sort of a little bit further away, right? And, you know, I'd be like, that would be one thing. If I wanted to get this into a very busy track, I would get very close. And another thing is to play around with the way the microphone is aimed. So if I aim it down like this, it's called off axis because it's pointed straight down below where the sound generating machine of the guitar is. So if I start playing, see, first of all, being this close, it's much more intimate sound. It's almost like your ear is in the guitar, right? And so, but also, if I angle the microphone down a little bit, right, it doesn't have as much bass response as if I aim it. So all those low notes, if I just play an open E chord. See how much thinner that sounds now? And what's good about this is that this will fit in with a bass guitar, a bass drum, and I won't need to EQ it after the fact as much, and you'll be mostly hearing this. Mostly hearing the strumming across the strings, which is what you hear on a lot of recordings with acoustic guitar. So mic positioning is really important, and you know, where you are in the microphone, like how close you are to the microphone. It's important depending upon what you're actually recording. Okay, so just one other thing I want to show you here is that, notice that, let's go back to Pro Tools here. And I'm going to keep this muted for right now so we don't have any thing. But let me add my EQ 3.7. And let me reposition this to record my acoustic guitar again, which you don't need to see me. Oh, let's see. I think we can do this. Great. Excellent. This is the hardest part of teaching this class. So, now, that's too loud, right? And the way I know it's too loud is if I zoom in on my meter, when I strum on that, see that? It's going into the red. So if I'm digging into that, that's not going to be good. So there's two solutions to fix that. I can either back away from the microphone a little bit, or I could turn the microphone gain down on the audio interface, or in this instance on the console, right? I could turn the microphone gain down here, which is analogous to the knob on your console, on your microphone input, on your mic preamp, on your audio interface, right? So that would fix that. So basically, you want to get it so that again, your loudest sound is around -6. That would be really good. But you'd also, you don't want to be, if you can turn the microphone preamp up and keep it hot if you're going to play something very soft. If you're going to play, let's say I just don't use a pick and I'm just going. Right, so you can have the microphone preamp hot if you're not going to be playing very loud. And, you could get the instrument really close to the mic and it almost... I mean, you can hear my fingernails going across the string, so you can get a very intimate sound. So in that case, having the microphone preamp at a volume where if you're strumming it, it's distorting, you're not going to be strumming it. You're playing a very quiet part, so you can bring it up a little bit to capture some of those nuances. But that's why it's nice to have numbers, because you can have a reference point that will you can shoot for. So what I would say is that your loudest peaks on your instrument should be around -6. If they go over -6 a little bit, not a problem. But you just don't want to get into the red, Okay. Okay, so let me turn on my fancy plugins back on so that I have a better sound. Fancy, yes. This is interesting. This is a good primer on EQ. So let me just show you this for a second. All right, so this is a graphic equalizer here, this blue and black thing, right? And it's an emulation of a hardware gear. So let me turn this off. And this is my sound, right? This microphone has a very, almost like a honky sound to it. So what I'm doing here is I'm scooping some of the mid-range out, I'm boosting the low end, and I'm boosting the high end. And, it makes this actually sounds more like my voice, except I don't have all that low end, but I don't have that nasally kind of whine as much as I do that this microphone picks up. So anyway, that's just a little an aside. Let's put this away. And are there any questions on anything? All right, so everybody has their recording kits, or you own your own audio interface and microphone and everything. Okie doke. So let's close this. So what I want you to do for next week's homework is to finish this up as much as you can. Okay? So we're going to talk about a few things today that we haven't talked about yet. So let's just listen for 30 seconds just to get re-familiar with the track again. Let's get rid of me too. Now, the first thing I want to talk about, right, is that most of you people had a really good setup mix. I was very happy with what I saw. There were all, especially, I forget who it was. Maybe it was Andrew. He only used one microphone for every guitar. And what was interesting about that is he could have all of the gain stages on these guitars louder because there were less guitars. So in other words, if you have 9 guitar tracks, the volume of all those summed together or added them up, you don't have a microphone stand or windshield. Okay, so you can probably sign one out. Are you at the college ever? Physically, Chelsea?
No. I mean, I could stop by there, but I'm not
All right. So
over.
what we should, I'll email you and Justin, and you could probably sign one out from us. All
Okay.
right.
Thank you.
Yeah. You play saxophone, is that correct?
Yes.
You should probably have a microphone stand.
Okay.
But you could sign certainly, and a windscreen. You could certainly sign one out from us. No problem.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Just remind me if I forget. I don't want to, forget about it. Okay. So what I was going to say is that if you've got 9 guitars tracks, you have 3 guitar tracks with 3 microphones on each one, all of the volumes for those add up. But if you only have 1 microphone on each guitar, you've got 1/3 the number of tracks. So there's 66% less volume coming out of those 3 tracks. So you can have the volume of each one of those individual tracks, the clips, higher. Right? So that's something good to know. Now, if we look here, the first bit of music starts at here. And this is measure 2 pretty much, right? Now, if we want to start at measure 1, we can fix that. And what you can do is you can go to Event, Time Operations, and Move Song Start. So there's no key command for this. Time Operations and Move Song Start. And let's look at this. So you've got your time base here, and right now it's set for minutes and seconds. And measure 2 starts now at 3 seconds in. But if we go here, we can set it to bars and beats. Okay? And we're at measure 2 right now where the music starts. And we want to renumber that measure to measure 1. And for right here, as far as realign goes, we only want to realign the song start. We don't want to do anything else here because we don't want any of our tracks to move. We only want the start of the song to move. So if we click here and hit apply, we'll notice now that 3 seconds in, we're at measure 1. And this would be called one of 2 things, pre-roll, or if you had analog tape, it would be like a leader. In other words, on analog tape, they have like the recording tape, but in order to get the beginning of a piece of an album or whatever you're recording to start on a 2-track tape, they would put a piece of white tape and splice it to the beginning of the big reel so that would go around for a few seconds and then the music would start. So you could be able to wrap all the tape around the 2 pickup spools and not cut off the beginning of the piece of music. That's called a leader tape. And if you're recording with analog tape, you always have 5 to 10 seconds of silence up front so that if somebody jumps the gun and they come in a fraction of a second early, like I did here, right here, you see here's the beginning of the track measure here, and you see I'm a little early here. If I had started this piece right at the beginning here, this would be cut off and you wouldn't hear the beginning of my note. It would look like that, like this, right? You would miss that beginning of that waveform. It doesn't look the same. So I typically put, now I did this, a long time ago in 2014. So I've, grown and my work methods have evolved, but I typically put like 3 or 4 measures up front when I'm just recording static live audio. And and so I just move my song start to measure 1 at a later point in the piece. And this gives me some time at the beginning so that I won't cut the beginning of my note off. So that's kind of important. So that's the first thing I want you guys to all do. Now, we did some work with editing and we did some volume automation last week. What if I wanted to add some reverb, right? there's two ways to do it. The simple way to do it is to just put a reverb plugin, and we're going to use reverb, a deverb, which I wish that they would update this. And just to plug this in, let me turn the wet down, and let's solo our clap. And we could just add reverb like that. I don't want you to do that. All right. And I'll tell you why you don't do that. You don't want to have a different reverb on every track. You want to have your music in a space, right? So you typically want to have just a couple of reverbs unless you've got a special effect that the reverb is doing, in which case I then plug it in, insert it into the track. But what I want to do with reverb is create a send effect where I'm sending a copy of the audio to another track that has reverb, and then I can send several instruments into those tracks and it sounds like they're in the same space, right? That grew out of the analog days where, let's say you had what was known as a chamber. And typically a chamber would be a room in your recording studio that was completely sealed, except maybe a tiny little door where you could get in and out. It had cement hard walls, and it had one or two microphones at one end and a speaker at the other end. And you would feed the audio into that speaker. The speaker would play the sound in that room, and the microphones would pick up the sound. And if you were like 10 or 15 feet away, with a lot of hard reflective surfaces, you would have a reverb. You'd get like a real reverb. And then you only have one chamber maybe in your studio, so all of your instruments would have to be routed there, and you would send varying amounts of reverb to your instrument depending upon how wet you wanted it to sound. And that helps to sort of glue the track together. So let me just, let's go to the screen here, and what I can do is I can just Google so Capitol Studios is a famous studio in Los Angeles, and so this is what this is what chambers look like, right? Oh, this is good. So this is an article on this, right? So you can see here, this is Sunset Sound. This is a famous studio in Los Angeles. The Doors, they've been around since the 60s. But you see the speaker here, and then this big, hard surfaced room. Oh, look, they do have the Doors there. Then Abbey Road has a couple of chambers, but notice this has pillars in it, and it sort of breaks up the sound. It gives it a unique sound. And here's Capitol Studios, right? So you notice they've got the speakers here facing towards the walls. And then if you zoom in, you see they've got a microphone here picking up the reflection off the walls. Yeah. Oh, Motown. Yeah. Okay. So that's a chamber reverb. So there are other kinds of reverbs in the old days. They're plate reverbs. And we'll talk about the differences of all those next week. I'll give you a little bit of a hint today. But for right now, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the lowest track of audio, which in this case is I have my guitar case. So it's above the master. So we're going to create a track. And the reason I'm selecting this is that I'm going to put a track right in between these two. So Command-Shift-N. And what for this, we want a stereo. One stereo, something called an aux input, and I'm going to name this reverb. And I'm going to hit create. Okay. And you can color code this if you have more than one reverb, or if you've got reverb and echo delay, which we'll go over also. Put all those the same color. So the first thing you're going to do three steps. The first one is you're going to hold down the command key and you're going to click on the S. And the S becomes grayed out, and that's called solo saved. So that means if you're soloing an instrument and you've got reverb send, you'll still be able to hear the reverb. If this is not solo saved, And that's like that. You won't hear the reverb when you're soloing an instrument. And I'll show you that in a minute. So Command click. The next is you're going to set your input. So you're going to click here and you're going to go to what's called a bus. And you're going to pick the first available bus. So notice with here, we set up our buses already for this week. We've got 5, 6. They're all amber. So the first available bus that's not amber is 7 and 8. Now, what I'm going to show you now, and you can go back and do the other ones, is you're going to name your bus. And the way you name your bus is you're going to right click and another menu is going to pop up. So I right click and I select rename. And I'm going to rename this reverb. Now, what happens here is that if you go to your I/O and you look at your bus, right? Bus 7 and 8 is now renamed reverb. So if you want to go back to the original one, you'll have to, hit default again on your next session. Okay. So now the last step, so it's 4 steps. So, solo safe, set your input, your input, rename your input. Go to your insert column, right? And then click and then go multi-channel plugin. And I'm going to go to Avid because it's easier for me to find, but you can just go to reverb and go for what's called, just go to deverb, right? Or if you go to the reverb right here, scroll down, you'll have less of these. Just use deverb. So let's take a look at this really quickly. So this is an algorithmic reverb, and it uses math and algorithms to simulate these different spaces here. So the only ones that we're going to concern ourselves with today is a plate reverb. So you're going to select plate, and you're going to take the gain, and you're going to turn it all the way up. And notice that the gate has 3 different sizes: small, medium, and large. So for next week, just do a medium plate and leave it at that. We'll continue working on reverb. I just want to get it happening today. Okay, so you've got a medium plate. You're not touching any of the other controls for today or for next week. So let's take this clap, which is right here. Now, if I want to hear that clap with reverb, what you're going to have to do is go to this guy here and add your sends column. And if you don't have an I/O column, you're going to have to add that also. So you add your sends column. And because, when you're working on different projects, you may have this looking differently to save space on your laptops, right? So that's why it's good to know this stuff here. So I'm going to go to my sends column, and I'm going to go right here to the first one, which is letter A. I'm going to click, and I'm going to go to bus. And I'm going to select reverb, stereo. A little fader is going to come up right here. And what this does is this controls the amount of the sound that's being sent to the reverb track. So basically, you have the audio that's coming out of the clap. And what doing the send does is it takes a copy of that audio and routes it to the spot you are sending it to. So in this case, we're sending it to the reverb track. So as I bring this fader up, you're going to hear reverb being added. Now that's too much, right? So, and if you want to bypass it, you can just click on the mute button here. Or you can right click, I think it's command click will also mute that. Now, if you want to have the same amount of reverb on clap 2, you can simply option click drag. And then you have the same amount of reverb on both claps. Now, let's go up to our harmonica, and I'm going to solo this. And we're going to add our reverb. And I'm going to bring this up. And I'm just going to select this area here, and I'm going to loop that, which is Command-Shift-L. No reverb. I have it about 10. It's nice. Now, remember when I said that I have this solo saved so you can hear this. So let me turn this off by clicking on that. You see that that's dark again. You're not hearing the reverb now because you're only hearing what's soloed, which is the harmonica. So if I do Command, it sounds, even just like that sounds pretty good. Right? Don't overdo it with the reverb. This doesn't sound good. So what I typically do is I make sure I have the fader here. I close my eyes, I play it, and I bring it up. Now I'm hearing it, right? It's too much. Bringing it down. And then what you can also do is you can play and stop it and listen to the tail. And then you can get a sense of how much reverb there is. Play. So I bring this up. See, right now it sounds like it's reverb with a harmonica. When it's down here, it's a harmonica that's in a room, you know, so you can tell the difference there. So now so that's good. And now we've got the guitar feed, right? Fill guitar, this here. That's going through this aux track. So rather than putting reverb into both of these, I can put it into the aux track and it will affect both of those guitars. Right? So that I only have, see how I only have that at 15. Again, too much. And then, let's see, guitar 2, which is this guy here. So let's solo this. And we put our reverb in. Right? So I'm just adding some reverb to all these tracks. Not a lot of reverb, because you're supposed to remember that when all the tracks are playing together, all the reverb adds up as well, just like with your output volume. And then right here, a little reverb. So now I'm listening to this, and I think the claps have too much reverb. So I'm going to go back and readjust these, right, and bring this down a little bit. It's just... Right, so you just, you know, that's better. I'm going to mute the reverb and we'll hear the difference in the sound. No reverb. It just sounds a little bit like a little bit more like they're playing in a room, right? I haven't overdone it with the reverb. I've just added a tasteful amount. Now, let's just do a little bit of talk on echo. So I'm going to highlight the reverb track because I want to have delay, add some echo in there. So Command-Shift-N1, new stereo aux input, and I'm going to call this, you can call it echo or delay. And I want to make both of these either no color or the same color. So I'm just going to do no color. That's my default. You can do different if you want. Option click, then Command, solo that, right? Solo save, go for input. 9 and 10 is the next free one. And right click, and I'm going to rename this delay. And then you're going to go up to delay, and it's going to be mod delay 3. That's the one you're going to use. Now, this is a stereo delay, and let's just talk about it for a second here. So with this delay, you have a left and a right. This is your input, and this is your output. The gain will always be up here. Let's not worry about the modulation on either side. And let's link the left and right so that they're both doing the same thing just for today. So I'm going to click here, and we're going to make sure our sync is on. Now, this is the time, the amount of delay, and the feedback is the number of echoes. So right now, the delay is at 250 milliseconds. If you look here, when the sync is on, you also have rhythmic subdivisions. So let's say I wanted to do an eighth note. All right. Okay. And I'm going to keep the feedback at 0. Let's go up to our harmonica track, and let's add another bus and delay. And let's zoom in. And actually, let me go here and let me solo this, and let's just loop that. Bring this up. Let me mute the reverb for a second. Right, so you're hearing that's way too much, and that rhythmically is sloppy. What if I made it a 16th note? Now that's starting to sound like Chess Records, like a little slap back. So let's turn the amount down. So that's pretty cool, right? So I can't hear the delay with all the other instruments are playing, so I'm going to bring the volume of that up. Now, let me solo this again, and let me show you... let me show you the feedback. So here, it's just playing it once after the fact. If I bring the feedback up, you'll hear it play back multiple times. So let me make the delay longer. Right, so if I bring the feedback down, it'll just play once, and then it'll repeat. Oh, that should be 0. Here we go. Here we go. I turn the feedback up. So, okay, let's play. So you see when I'm playing this part here, I've added that 16th note delay, so it actually adds another rhythm to what I'm playing. So delay can do all sorts of really cool stuff. And again, this is too much. All right. So for next week, I'm gonna do, go over your homework in the morning, and I'll give you feedback. But basically, add reverb and delay like we did in class today, using 2 aux send tracks and using the send column, just like what we did in class today, plus whatever notes I give you in your feedback videos for next week, and then that'll be the final project. Now, there's one last thing I want to teach you today, and I haven't taught you guys yet, is you've done this. You want to send this to your mom. Hey, Mom, look at this great track I just made. Take a listen. It's what what my college education is doing for me. So you want to bounce this down to a typically an MP3, right? All right. The first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to select an area that you want to render. So what I typically do is I go just a tiny bit. Let's see, where's the first guitar? Right. I go to slip mode right here, and I go just a tiny bit before the first sound, right? And I start there, and then I'll hold the shift key down and go a little bit past the end of the track, because if there's reverb, you want to make sure that you're not cutting the tail off by ending it too soon. So this has all been selected. This is the part, the whole track is going to be bounced because there's no muted tracks. But we're just doing the area of the track that's going to be rendered. So there's 2 ways to bring up the bounce menu. You can go to File, Bounce Mix, or you can do Command Option and the letter B like boy. And let's take a look at this. Got the name. So this is what I've called this. And the file type, we're going to choose MP3 because that's what you're most used to. Oops, MP3. And you want to do it offline. Session folder, bounced files, that's where it's going to go to. And make, right? And then you're going to click bounce, and another menu is going to come up that you're going to fill in the metadata. So do you know how, like on iTunes or any MP3 player, right, when you look at a song, it's got the name, the time, the artist, the album, and the genre. That's called metadata. And you enter that in yourself. So let me show you. Hit bounce, a new menu is going to come up. And what you want to do here is you want to make your encoding speed the slowest, and your CBR, you want to make that 320 kilobytes per second, because that bits per second, because that's going to be the best sound. Typically, you'll get stuff that's either at 128 or 160, but it's still not going to be that big of a file. So we'll make it 320. And then the title and the artist, you'll put your own name. The album, whatever you want to call it, record RSF. And then the genre, I'll call this acoustic, whatever. And then see where it says track 1, you want to delete that, okay? Because then it'll put a 0-1 in front of it and you can't reorder it the way you want. And then you hit OK. And then it bounces like this, and it's done. And then the audio file is located in your session folder in the bounced file folder. And you notice that all of the metadata is right there. I released that on Spotify. I'll get five listens. Okay. So any questions on any of this? I'll go over the making of an MP3 again. I'll review that. But just for next week, you're going to finish up the mix. Last week, everybody's pretty much was in good shape, I think. Maybe a couple of people needed a little bit more work, but I was, overall, I was happy with what I heard. And you just need to continue on with what we did today and whatever feedback I give you from what you hand in tonight. And then just know that after today, I won't be able to look at homework. It'll be sporadic after tomorrow. I'll get to it when I can, just for the next 10 to 14 days. I'm going to be really busy. All right, 5 minutes. Let me show you something. Dee, 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 dee. All right. So this is the final session for Act 1 of this film. And notice that I've got a master folder for Act 1. It's Catch 98, Act 1, Final Music. And if I open this up, it's got a movie file in here because Pro Tools needs to access the movie. And in here is my session folder and my session file. Typically, sometimes I'll have a video file folder in here, but I didn't do that this time. Inside here are the audio files with all the audio files that this session is using. You can see there's quite a few, right? If I send the person, my friend Ken, who's doing the final mix, just this file and he opens it up on his computer, he's going to get UGATs because the audio files are on my computer, not on his computer. So let me open this up, right? It's going to take a second for the video engine to launch. Okay, good. Give it a second. There's a lot of tracks in here. All right, so what do we got here, right? Each one, this is organized. Each one of these colored areas is a different cue. So this is the first cue, second cue, third cue, fourth cue, and fifth cue. And what I've done is I've rendered all of these, and notice everything's color coordinated, and everything is named. So let me make these tracks bigger. Right, big drums, 1M1. Pitched percussion, 1M1. Keyboards, 1M1. The name of this track, this is the first cue of the first act. So 1M1, first act, music, first cue. Vocals, right? So this was about 25 tracks, and I've rendered it down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tracks, right? And it goes along with the movie here. I can't, I'm going to have to turn off the movie. But down here, I've got all the black tracks here. This is the dialogue. This is my original tracks, mono mix. They had to edit. They had to do some editing. So I've had to clean everything up and prepare it. But I can play the music, certainly, since I own the music. And as we go through the timeline, this is the first track. Right, and I've got my keyboards right here. Oh, these shouldn't be solo safe. These shouldn't. Oh, I made a mistake. Oh, well. Ken will fix it. Okay. That's my harp and my celeste. Right, these are just my sustained string orchestra. Down here is my low strings. It's Colegno and pizzicato. This is my big drums. Right, and I've got that all set up like that, all organized, all ready to be mixed, except for that one mistake I made, which Ken will fix. I'll have to text him. I did that. And so, you know, I can go to any spot. Can't play that movie. I get in trouble. This is a sports documentary, so we've got sports music. Right, so the whole act is right here, and I've got the first 2 acts done, and I have to do Act 3 tomorrow, and then next week there's a lot of rewrites in Act 4, which is going to take me a lot of time to do. Act 4 is a mess, needs to be fixed. So, you know, this is pretty advanced stuff for doing this, but it's what if you want to be a film composer, you need to know how to set this stuff up like this. You need to sort of know a little bit of everything. But we start at the beginning and the basics, which is what you guys have gotten this semester. So any questions, everyone? You're going to finish up the mix next week. You're going to add reverb and a little bit echo, just to the harmonica echo, and a little bit of plate reverb to some of the other instruments. Not on the guitar case drums. Leave those dry, but add a little bit to the other instruments and whatever other feedback I give you on your individual feedback videos that I'll make tomorrow. And then that'll be due next Wednesday. And then next week, I will be assigning the final projects, which will be fun. All right, everyone, have a great day, and I will catch you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, Professor. Bye.
Thank you for coming today.
Thank you. Please don't forget my email to about the mic stand.
Oh, right. Thank you. I'll do it right. I'll do it right now.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.